After decades of travel and sitting in traffic jams around the world, I finally figured out what type of city makes me tick. As a photographer, I like my cities to be raffish. By that, I mean cities with charm, but a faded sort of charm, slightly dilapidated, elegant at one point but no longer, even a bit disreputable. Sunny and warm, with abundant light, where people live their lives outside, and of course, walkable. These types of cities provide an endless supply of photo opportunities for anyone interested in urban or street photography. And that's why on a recent visit, I hit it off so well with Marseille, France. Let's face it, Marseille has quite a reputation.
Marseille is a port city, hard and rough and Mediterranean.
This Mediterranean port was the original headquarters of the notorious French Connection, a drug smuggling ring shipping over 75% of all the heroin used in the U.S. from the 1930s until the 1970s. This was popularized by the Academy Award-winning 1971 movie starring Gene Hackman. The city to this day continues to have a bad reputation among the French for several reasons.
It's a big city that breeds crime and corruption like New York or Chicago.
Well, actually, crime probably is higher than in most French cities, and there's plenty of graffiti for everyone to enjoy their fair share. But this is still a fantastic city to visit and photograph. It's generally safe, easy to get around, full of interesting sights and beautiful neighborhoods. It's not snooty, and it has seafood. So let me take you on a photographic journey through this raffish city. I'll offer you 5 subjects to focus on, whether you're a tourist, a serious hobbyist, or a professional photographer. First, you must go hang out at the main harbor in front of the old downtown. Marseille, like many raffish cities, is a port city. The reason I like port cities is that they historically tend to be more open-minded places, open to trade, people, and ideas that flow through them. The Marseille port is no exception. This is the city's front porch, where you'll see people from everywhere hanging out, strolling around, or, I don't know. I have a theory, unproven, that this swirl of humanity, trade, and ideas makes port cities harder for government officials to control, and that results in a higher prevalence of things that attract photographers, peeling paint, street art, graffiti. Anyway, this is just a theory, and I have no proof. But to be honest, the Marseille port has undergone some gentrification. Fiberglass sailboats and pleasure boats now outnumber old wooden fishing boats, although some of those can still be found and are quite beautiful. I recommend walking the port in both the early morning and late afternoon light, and the blue hour, in all types of weather. Surrounding neighborhoods ooze character and a sense of dilapidated charm and authenticity that's lacking in other European cities. All in all, you can't go wrong in this part of town. Many raffish port cities have neighborhoods that used to be elegant but are no longer so. This is not a gentrified city. It's not sterile and it's not corporate. People here work to live rather than live to work. You're not going to see many steel and glass high-rises or people rushing off to work in suits and ties. More often, I felt the city exuded a freewheeling and a relaxed joy of life that you won't necessarily find in Paris or in bustling cities like New York, London, or Washington, D.C. That said, I don't mean to imply that Marseille is an easy city to live in. It seemed crowded and somewhat expensive. Its unemployment rate in 2020 was about 15%, and double that for people under 30. I imagine it has the same urban ills that you'd find in any European city, even if its days as a heroin smuggling center are a thing of the past. From strictly a photographic perspective, the city exudes a sense of authenticity, and you see that in its street art. In my opinion, this city has the most entertaining street art of any I've seen in Europe. They seem to specialize in portraits here, some of which are quite beautiful, others haunting, and others just plain weird. The murals I enjoyed the most were the ones that seemed to capture the unseemly or, depending on how you look at it, the fun side of the city. There seems to be no reluctance for someone to paint any wall, no matter how old or elegant the building or neighborhood. In Marseille, it seems like it's your God-given right to mark up, well, whatever you want, which I suppose is fine unless that's your doorway. More so than most European cities, and certainly for France, Marseille is diverse, both in terms of its people and architecture. This is the most international of all French cities. About 25% of the population are immigrants from other countries, with the most common being Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia, but also many people from sub-Saharan Africa. North African street markets are easy to find, and you'll hear African and Arabic music in many places. Unlike in other French cities, immigrants don't live all the way out in the surrounding suburbs and their high-rises. Many live in the city center and seem better integrated into the daily life of the city, at least on the surface. As a photographer, I enjoy observing such diversity. I think, though, that many native-born French who don't live in Marseille may tend to view the city in a more negative light because of all these trends I've described. They might be uncomfortable with the greater mixing here than you might see elsewhere in the country. This is just a hunch, I have no proof, and if someone from France is watching this video, I would welcome your thoughts in the comments below. The city also has great architectural diversity. It's home to the same types of elegant 19th century buildings and apartments that are so popular in Paris, yet also some of the best examples of concrete brutalism the world's architects have produced. My favorite, and well worth photographing, is Le Corbusier's gigantic apartment building in a residential neighborhood just down the street from the Velodrome soccer stadium. This apartment building was about the first of its kind when it was constructed in 1946 and was quite cutting edge back then. Aside from apartments, it's open to the public and contains a hotel, a restaurant, numerous shops, and a wacky rooftop deck with great views of the surrounding city. You can have lots of fun experimenting with different architectural angles and viewpoints, and this building shoots great in both black and white and color. It's like time travel to the mid-20th century. I find cities with great views to be more photographically inspiring than others, and Marseille does not disappoint. You're spoiled for choice here. Walk out to the old stone fortifications guarding each side of the old port. Take a short boat ride to the nearby island prison of Chateau d'If. Definitely creepy. Walk along the Corniche and find tiny postcard-sized harbors tucked into coves. These places are still oriented toward fishing. Gone are the days where these areas were part of the so-called French Connection and the departure point for heroin smuggled into the US and Canada. But these neighborhoods are so hidden, it's easy to imagine activities there being hard to detect and control as they were back in the 1930s through the 1970s. Nowadays, they reward the photographer with eye-popping views along the coast and psychedelic views of waves crashing ashore. Here are my two favorite views of Marseille, where every photographer and tourist should visit as much as possible in different lighting conditions. First is the balcony that surrounds the Notre Dame Basilica on a hill overlooking the port. It's definitely on the beaten path, but well worth a trek up the hill, or, for those of you with heavy cameras, the 12-euro taxi ride. You'll get a real sense up here of how people live cheek by jowl in Marseille, but you'll also be rewarded with 5-star views in all directions. I came to appreciate that this city has perhaps the most spectacular setting of any major city in Europe. It rivals those of other more visited raffish cities, like Barcelona in next-door Spain or Rio de Janeiro. My other recommended viewpoint is a small plaza overlooking the north side of the main harbor, right by the fortress of Saint-Jean. From up here, you'll see wonderful views of the harbor with the low mountains of Provence in the distance. You can find this place by looking for the statue of the young man playing ultimate frisbee with his pet bears. Or is that a flattened football?
The end zone! Touchdown!
Finally, there's that wonderful Mediterranean light. If you've been to a city on the Med, or to the Pacific coastline in California, Mexico, or parts of South America, you'll know what I mean. If not, try and get to one of these places someday. Sunny, mild weather most of the year, a characteristic shared by most raffish cities. Perhaps this is what makes them raffish. Their climates allow people to live their lives on the outside. You'll see this sort of mixing going on all the time in Marseille. People walking and talking, exchanging ideas, sitting in cafes, engaging in romance, gambling, or spray painting walls.
Deals and arrangements, more or less legitimate, conditioning life on every level.
Here's my final thought. If you want to visit France to photograph stereotypical French postcard scenes of stone villages, chateaus, elegant cities, or world-class sights, don't come to Marseille. But if you want to photograph life as how it's really lived, on the streets, in an energetic, somewhat dilapidated Mediterranean city, then Marseille can be your photographic dream. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, it would mean a lot to me if you can please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next one.
Its way of life is what the French call the combine.